The studio lights blazed down, casting a golden glow across the vibrant set of the Kelly Clarkson Show. The audience buzzed with anticipation, their cheers a living pulse as Kelly Clarkson, radiant and warm, welcomed her next guest. Ladies and gentlemen, he's the king of the seas, the warrior of the screen, and the heartthrob of hearts. So please welcome Jason Momoa. The crowd erupted, a tidal wave of applause crashing through the studio as Jason strode out, his larger-than-life presence filling every corner of the room. His grin was wide, his long hair tied back loosely, and his leather jacket hugged his broad shoulders like a second skin. But beneath the charisma, there was a flicker of something raw, something restless in his eyes that the cameras didn't quite catch. As he settled into the guest chair, Kelly's infectious laugh rang out, setting the tone for what promised to be a lively interview. Little did anyone know, this moment was the calm before a storm that would leave the audience gasping, the internet ablaze, and hearts racing with questions. What could push a man like Jason Momoa, known for his warmth and humor, to storm off a talk show set? Buckle up, because this is where it all begins. Kelly leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Jason, you've been everywhere: Hawaii, Atlantis, even the deserts of Dune. But let's talk about something real. I heard you've been diving deep into your roots with your new project, Chief of War. Tell us about it. The audience clapped, eager for insight into the Apple TV Plus series that had been generating buzz for its raw depiction of Hawaiian history. Jason's smile softened, and for a moment, he seemed to anchor himself in the question. Yeah, Kelly, this one's personal, he said, his voice low and steady. It's about my people, the Hawaiian people, and the fight to protect our culture, our land, our way of life. It's not just a show, it's a piece of my heart. The audience cooed, moved by the sincerity in his words. Kelly nodded, her empathy palpable. That's beautiful, Jason. I mean, you're out here telling stories that matter. But let's lighten it up a bit. Any fun behind-the-scenes stories from the set? She winked, and the crowd chuckled, expecting one of Jason's signature playful anecdotes. But instead of leaning into the levity, Jason's expression shifted. His jaw tightened, and his eyes darted to the side, as if wrestling with something unspoken. Fun? He repeated, his voice carrying a slight edge. You know, Kelly, it's hard to talk about a fun when you're telling a story about colonization, about losing what makes you who you are. The audience quieted, sensing the shift in tone. Kelly, ever the professional, kept her smile but tilted her head, her instincts kicking in. Absolutely, I get that. It's heavy stuff. Maybe you can share what it means to you to bring this history to life? She was trying to steer the conversation back to safe waters, but Jason wasn't following. He leaned forward, his massive frame seeming to loom larger. It's not just history, Kelly. It's happening now. Our lands, our waters, they're still under threat. People watch shows like this and think it's entertainment, but for me, it's a fight. Every day. The studio fell silent, the air thick with tension. Kelly's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded, her voice gentle. I hear you, Jason. That passion, it's powerful. Let's talk about how you're using your platform to. Before she could finish, Jason cut in, his voice rising. Platform? Kelly, it's not about a platform. It's about truth. It's about people ignoring what's happening to indigenous communities because it's inconvenient to care. The audience shifted uncomfortably, a few murmurs rippling through the crowd. Kelly's smile faltered, but she pressed on, her voice steady. I totally get that, and I think it's amazing you're shedding light on these issues. Maybe we can talk about some of the positive changes you're seeing. She was trying to pivot, to keep the show's upbeat vibe intact, but Jason wasn't having it. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor, and the audience gasped. You know what, Kelly? I'm tired of sugarcoating it. I'm tired of people pretending to care when they don't. I came here to talk about something real, and all you want is a soundbite. The studio was a frozen tableau. Kelly's mouth parted, her eyes wide with shock. The producers in the wings exchanged frantic glances, and the audience held its breath, unsure whether this was part of the show or a genuine unraveling. Jason's chest heaved, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. I am done, he said, his voice a low growl. And with that, he turned and stormed off the set, his boots echoing in the stunned silence. The cameras swiveled, catching Kelly's bewildered expression as she tried to process what had just happened. "You have broken bar, okay? Wow," she stammered, forcing a laugh. "We'll be right back after this break." The screen cut to a commercial, but the audience and the millions watching at home were left reeling, their minds racing with questions. What had set Jason off? Was this a publicity stunt, or had something deeper, something personal, pushed him to the edge? As the show resumed, Kelly did her best to regain her footing, cracking a few jokes and moving on to the next segment. But the energy in the room had shifted irrevocably. Social media was already exploding, with hashtags like #MomoMeltdown and #Kelly Clarkson Show trending within minutes. Clips of the moment were shared thousands of times, dissected by fans and critics alike. Some praised Jason for his raw honesty, calling him a voice for the voiceless. Others accused him of being unprofessional, of blindsiding Kelly with his outburst. But no one could deny the electricity of the moment. It was raw, unfiltered, and undeniably human. Behind the scenes, the story was far more complex. Jason hadn't come to the show intending to cause a scene. In fact, he'd been excited to talk about Chief of War, a project he'd poured his heart and soul into. For months, he'd been navigating the grueling demands of filming, promoting, and advocating for the issues at the core of the series. The weight of representing his Hawaiian heritage, of telling a story that honored his ancestors while confronting the painful realities of